Hey, this is Steve Stine from guitarzoom, and I am actually in Fort Wayne, Indiana right now in my hotel room, and I had some questions regarding how to approach playing more horizontally versus just playing vertically all the time. So I thought that might be kind of a fun thing to talk about with you. Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can do this. There's either the exploration way in terms of the position that you're playing in, or you can approach this from an ear training sort of way. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use A major as our example. Okay, so let's say, for instance, I was going to play the A major scale. And it's okay if you just know pentatonic or whatever it might be, but needless to say, if you want to work your way horizontally across the fretboard, you've got to learn more positions to be able to do that, or you've got to learn what your notes are. So if we think about it, if we were playing an A major chord, okay, what we're playing are the notes A, C sharp, and E. Now, most of us, when we learn how to play, we're not really thinking about that. We're thinking about playing a scale, right? Some sort of position that we've learned on the guitar. That sort of thing, okay? So when it comes time to try and write solos or create melodies or something like that, oftentimes we find ourselves kind of stuck, just kind of moving back and forth, right? So what's very enticing to people is the fact that you could kind of move this way instead. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to move up, I'm going to come up to the next octave. So I'm going to come up to this A right here, which is the 7th fret of the 4th string. And start thinking about this A and C sharp and E. So I have... Those are kind of my target notes. They're my safety notes, right? Because those notes are going to sound good over the A major chord. So if you're learning how to play, the first thing I talked about, if you're learning how to play and you know a bunch of your positions and you're just trying to get more creative moving horizontally, what I highly recommend that you do is you simply take a string, and it doesn't matter what string. Let's just take the 3rd string, for instance. So I've got... Let's actually use major instead of lead again. Okay, what you can do, now right now I'm thinking about the fact that my notes in the key of A are going to be A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, and G sharp. Now again, you either know that from theory or you know that from memorizing, your fretboard or whatever, but you've got to have some information to get you there. So as I'm looking at this scale here and I'm thinking, okay, I have A, and then I've got C sharp, and I've got E. So those are kind of my target notes at this point, and then everything else is going to fill in between. So what I could do in both cases that we talked about before is I could start trying to think about those and then start sort of filling the space in between. And what's really nice to do is if we're in A, which is why I chose this key, I could pluck the 5th string and hear how those notes are, this is the ear training part that I talked about. Now I can hear how those notes are sort of interacting with the sound of the A note, my root. Now, if you know anything about your theory, this is where you start listening to what like a major 7 would sound like. And how these notes create tension, and then when you land on or emphasize a particular note, it releases that tension, right? And you can see as you start learning to play more horizontally across the fretboard, you start recognizing melody, because you're not just playing licks and you're not just playing prescribed patterns that you've learned. And there's nothing wrong with all of those either. We want to be able to do that stuff as well. So what I always think about is if you start learning how to play more horizontally, always remember that you can always drop into a vertical motion, okay, with some of the scale shapes that you're familiar with. So if you were up here going, and then all of a sudden you drop into, you know, something that brings you across the fretboard this way. And then when you get to where you want to be, then you drop into your... But even when you're there, you know, you can drop back into something like that as well. So the importance of learning to play both vertically and horizontally are really important, and I always try and teach people to think a bit more about playing horizontally, simply because it can really open up. First of all, it can help you to escape from just playing up and down a particular scale, okay? The second thing that it does is it really starts opening your ear to being able to hear how these notes are interacting with the note or the chord that would be played. And if you're by yourself and you're not, you know, using a jam track or something, that's why it's always nice to have just an open string that you can use. Just sort of start exploring that. So needless to say, as you keep doing this and you start learning more about whatever scale, whatever key suits your needs best, the more you start understanding about that, then what you can do is you can start trying to kind of work your way across the fretboard this way too. So let's say I attach two strings together, right? So I've got this third string that I'm working on. But I want to attach onto the second string, right? And start kind of shifting up to that string. So I have... And I can move up to that string at any point as I'm playing. Okay, so you just start developing this freedom of being able to move, again, horizontally anytime you like with the scales that you're learning how to play, but then you can also start moving more vertically when you need more melody or you need to escape the box of just playing in a particular position and always getting that sound. But there's no doubt it requires you to do some studying. You have to be able to see the scale on the particular string that you're trying to play, which is why don't go outside your element of comfortability. If you always play in E minor, stay in E minor, that's okay. Or if you always play in G major or you always play in C major or whatever it is, utilize that. Even if it's not an open string, it's okay. Because you've already started developing this visualization anyway. So then the next step is you're either using your eyes and knowing where your notes are, your root, your third, your fifth, and so on, or on the second level, like I talked about, you're trying to develop your ear and hearing how these notes are actually interacting with each other. So hopefully that helps you a little bit in understanding how to start developing horizontal versus vertical movement on the fretboard and see if you can come up with some cool stuff. So stay positive, and I'll talk to you soon.